It's great to be back.
I don't have to call you mayor anymore. Huh?
Call me whatever you want.
We'll call you Congress. Your impressions of Congress now, 6 weeks in. What do you think?
Well, it's been an incredible run for the last 6 weeks. Obviously, when I was sworn into office in early January, in the middle of the shutdown, which is the first time in history that we've seen that, and obviously, as just described in the piece before we started talking, an unprecedented action by the President of the United States to ask Congress for something. He didn't get it, and yet he still declared a national emergency. That is no way to run a government.
The president says he's spoken with generals, and they thought that the wall was more important than military funding, which is where much of the funding for the wall would come from. You buying that?
I probably would doubt the accuracy of that statement, but regardless, the president did make the case over and over and over again for what he's trying to do on our southern border. And you know what? We had Congress take a look at it. We rejected it. By the way, both Democrats and Republicans rejected it. We came up with a compromise bill that did have significant new resources for border security, but not the wall. That was the bipartisan agreement. We voted on it. It passed. That's what the president should have signed. Instead, he went beyond that. He lost at during the legislative process and still went ahead and declared his national emergency. That's why I think the lawsuit against it is going to be successful, but most importantly, it sets a bad precedent. This is not how our government is supposed to work. There's supposed to be checks and balances. The Congress, I'm a member of Congress, the Congress sets the budget priorities for the country. Nothing can be spent, no government money can be spent without approval of Congress, and the president is trying to do an end around it after he failed to get his ideas passed through Congress. That's not the right way to go about our business.
Is the fact that funding and appropriations were involved here, does that make it different than what President Obama did regarding Dreamers?
Yes, that's exactly right. In this particular case, the President of the United States asked for an appropriation for what he was trying to accomplish. Congress did not give it to him. We put together a bipartisan committee to come up with a bipartisan compromise. That's exactly what Congress did. The President of the United States, by the way, agreed to that process. Compromises were made on both sides. That was presented to the Congress. I voted for it. A majority of the Congress did vote for it. Under those circumstances, it's simply not appropriate for the President to go ahead and declare a national emergency to try to do an end around Congress and get what he failed to get through the regular order, the regular process. Senator McCain, as you know, begged the Congress to restore regular order. We did that in this bipartisan deal, and it's unfortunate the president has taken the action he has.
You say it's not appropriate for the president to do this. Is it constitutional for the president to do this?
Well, as you know, immediately 16 attorney generals around the United States of America have already challenged this in court. I wish Arizona would as well, and the reason is because funding for important priority projects at Luke Air Force Base are potentially at risk, and I think all Arizona leaders, Democrat and Republican, need to stand up to protect the important mission of Luke. The committee that I serve on, the Judiciary Committee, is obviously going to have a hearing on this when I get back next week, and we're going to be asking some tough questions of the administration, as we should, in our role in checks and balances and oversight. We're going to be asking tough questions for them to better justify why this was a national emergency.
Back to Luke, what specifically is threatened out there?
There is $40 million of infrastructure projects that are there to support the F-35 mission, airport hangars and other things. Everyone in Arizona, all leaders, have said how much they support Luke, and we need to support the mission of Luke. It's not only important to the West Valley, it's important to the entire state of Arizona, it's important to our national military defense systems. And I would politely argue that if people knew that important infrastructure projects at Luke were put at risk because of this decision by the president, many people would not support it.
And yet the president says walls work. We are experiencing an invasion of our country. This has to be done.
I think what is a better investment is exactly what we put in the bipartisan agreement. More resources at our ports of entry, which is where so much of the illegal activity and drugs are crossing into the border. Give better support to our Border Patrol at points of entry. More money for judges so that people who are entering the humanitarian crisis that happen as a border can better be managed if we have people get a quicker opportunity to get through the court system. So we need to do more in that regard. But I think that the additional money that he wanted for the wall is not appropriate under the circumstances that he asked for it.
But again, when he says walls work, Do you disagree with that?
Well, look, we have a significant wall along our border in the larger urban areas. But I think the question is, when you have a finite resources, where are you going to spend those resources? I think the decision of the Congress in a bipartisan way to spend those resources better protecting the ports of entry, using technology, and better support for the immigration court system, which obviously so many people get stuck in that system because we don't have enough resources in that system. That's a much better investment than what the president was proposing.
Last question on this. The president said today that he predicted this would happen, that there would be court cases. The Ninth Circuit he would take it all the way to the Supreme Court, where he thought he would prevail. That sounds like an awful lot of time. Is he still, I mean, could there be a new president by the time all this is filtered out?
Well, obviously, when you go through the court system, who knows how long it could be. It could be a long period of time. But I think what the American people are most frustrated by, and our forefathers, when they founded this country, wanted a system of checks and balances. There's a reason why our Constitution gives the power of the purse strings to Congress, so that we don't have one leader. We don't have a king. We have a system in which you have one branch of government, the Congress, which puts forward spending bills. The president can decide whether to sign it or not. The president can, of course, using his bully pulpit, make a strong case for his priorities. But if he doesn't get his way through the legislative process, it's completely inappropriate to go around that process and declare a national emergency, and it sets a bad precedent for the future.
You are a member of the Judiciary Committee, and you guys passed a universal background check for all firearms transactions. You voted for that?
Yes, I did.
Why?
Well, look, I have been working with Congressman Gabrielle Giffords, that incredible leader from the state of Arizona who tragically was injured in that terrible gun incident in Tucson many years ago. She's an incredible leader. Her organization, Giffords PAC, have been pushing for universal background checks. Look, 97% of Americans believe in universal background checks. If you're going to purchase a weapon in the United States of America, you at least should pass a background check to make sure that you are an appropriate purchaser of that weapon. There shouldn't be loopholes through gun shows and other things. That's what we passed in Congress through what's called H.R. 8. It's one of the first bills that you're going to see passed by this Congress. It is going to pass out of the House, and I do think there's a really good chance it's going to get out of the Senate and end up on the president's desk. It stands for that important proposition that, yes, if you're going to be a weapon owner in the United States of America, gun owner in the United States of America, you should have to pass a background check.
And yet the NRA, quote here, it's a broadside against lawful firearm ownership. Do they have a point?
No, just the opposite. The idea of H.R. 8, universal background checks, is to ensure that people that do purchase weapons in this country pass a background check to make sure they're not someone who has engaged in violence in the past, maybe domestic violence, etc. The idea is to keep our country as safe as possible, to keep guns out of the hands of those that shouldn't have a weapon in their hand. It is a common sense solution. It's a policy premised on safety and the safety of the American people. And again, this is a proposition that is supported overwhelmingly by Republicans, by Democrats, and by gun owners as a common sense gun safety solution.
Yet, but not by all Republicans and not by all gun owners, because they look at what they call traps for the common innocent kind of firearm conduct, sales and transactions within families and among friends and those sorts of things. They say, though, that's out of bounds.
Well, the family member transaction, as you know, is not covered by the universal background check. But you're going to give a weapon to a friend or someone outside of your family, yeah, a quick background check, which is not a big intrusion, it's a very minor intrusion to ensure that the person who is receiving that weapon is an appropriate gun owner, I think is a policy that the vast majority of Americans, again, polls show almost 100%, 97% of Americans support this, and it is supported by vast majorities, Republicans and Democrats, for the premise being safety of our citizenry. It's a smart public policy.
What about Republican exemptions for those who are deemed at imminent risk, exempting maybe domestic abuse victims and those sorts of folks? A lot of amendments were thrown out there. None of them got through. Do those make sense to you?
Well, obviously, I've wanted to have what's called clean H.R. 8. The focus is always on safety. Obviously, they tried to pass a lot of amendments, but the purpose of the amendments was to slow the whole process down, hopefully to get it to a grinding halt, because they didn't want to actually have H.R. 8 successfully come out of the Judiciary Committee. The majority said, no, this is an important priority, not just for the Democrats, for the entire American people. When we hear 97% of people support a smart public policy to keep people safe, we're not going to let it get bogged down in the process. We're going to move forward with that policy.
Would moving forward include those deemed at imminent risk?
Well, look,
exemptions for those.
We'll keep it an open mind to anything, but let's be clear here. The idea was to keep weapons out of the hands of someone that is deemed a risk. We don't want someone that has a history of violence to be able to acquire a gun. We don't want someone that has a history of domestic violence to be able to acquire a gun. So we erred on the side of public safety in passing H.R. 8.
So there's still a possibility then down the line.
I'll always keep an open mind in the future, but we wanted to get this important priority, which is the highest priority of the Giffords PAC, the organization supported by Congressmember Gabrielle Giffords, who I love and respect so much. It was the right thing to do.
You're now in the belly of the beast back there in D.C. The difference between being His Honor, the mayor, the mayor of all of Phoenix, coming on Horizon every month, talking about what a great job you're doing, and being one of hundreds down there. I mean, when you're in D.C., man, you're in that bubble. How does it feel?
Well, first off, I love being mayor of the city of Phoenix. It was a great job, and we made great progress for our city in terms of job creation and transportation improvements, et cetera. Obviously, the body of city council is 8 council members plus the mayor. So it's a much more intimate experience, if you will, in terms of working closely with the council members. Only need to get 5 votes to get things done on the council. And obviously, as mayor, you had a large bully pulpit to make your case to the public as to why we should move forward particular public policy. Obviously, in Congress, I'm one of 435. I'm a freshman, which can be a wonderfully humbling experience on occasion. But the fundamentals of politics are still the same. The fundamentals of politics are, if you believe in something, you've got to make the case. You got to build broad coalitions. You got to bring people together. Some people are going to disagree with you. Sometimes you have to make compromise. One thing I've always tried to lead on as mayor and now a member of Congress is don't substitute the perfect for the good. If there's a good public policy, let's move forward with it. Just like I voted on that compromise budget deal in order to avoid any future shutdown and the devastating impact on people's lives. The fundamentals are you got to build broad coalitions, you got to work with people of both political parties to get things done, and on occasion make compromise. The fundamentals of governance are the same.
Keeping the perfect from massacring the good. In terms of politics, you're a Democrat. I'm not going to ask who you support for president. I can't even figure out who's running anymore. There's so many folks running. Be that as it may, there is some concern that Democrats could be lurching too far to the left in response to President Trump and all things D.C. Is that a valid concern for Democrats?
I would say, look, as mayor of the city of Phoenix, I was always part of a governing coalition. Always keep an open mind to all sides of an issue, and occasionally change your mind if someone has a better idea about how to move forward. People think that Democratic politics is somehow different now because they hear about various people that are towards the edges of the political spectrum. I've been involved in politics for a long period of time. And there's always been extremes in politics. That is nothing new. I don't know why people think that the fact that there's now an extreme on the right and extreme on the left is somehow something new to the political process. But I'm always going to be someone who's going to govern and try to get positive things done. And if that means compromising in order to move a policy forward, that's what good leadership is in part about.
Representative Greg Stanton, good to have you here.
Great to see you again.
All right, good to have you. Up next, the unique saxophone style of Derek Brown.